split out in the background, I can easily change these graphs to just show debt if that's what the board would like.
And we don't have to necessarily change them, but just so we're aware, when we're looking at it and you see a big number like that, you have to go down and actually
Yeah,
see.
it's true.
Yeah.
Bill?
Couple of questions. Do you know what the total estate debt is if we added everybody together?
No, because what I can find it, and I'll explain why in a moment, but what I did was I really just asked the people who were affected based on the list on your agenda today. I didn't ask people who had already merged. However, in the stat book, the annual statistical collection that we get from everybody, from each school district every year, those numbers are in there, and I can pull those numbers and I can tell you. I don't know what they are. We're still waiting for two of them, two, maybe three districts, I think maybe just one at this point, to get in their 2018. It's a little bit late because it was due August 15th. I started yelling at them, they started getting in. But I can give you that number. If not for 2018, I can certainly do 2017 and give you a rough idea what 18 will be. So I can do that.
Can you do FY15, the year
Yep.
that this
Yep.
began? And I'm thinking in terms of the state, possibly are us recommending to the legislature that they pick up part of the debt. And if we do, we need some numbers on that.
Okay.
Seems, okay, John?
Thinking back to our so-called principles, which I think we might serve us better if we regarded them as considerations. If we change the language of this principle referring to indebtedness to what the statute says, which is greatly differing levels of indebtedness among the member districts, and that we are directed to consider that by the statute. And that's the language of the statute.
Can you just read that again?
The state board is required to give consideration to, quote, greatly differing levels of indebtedness among the member districts. And so, to that point, it would seem that it would be useful if that's what the data described. And I understand that for practical purposes, these are the consequences of those different levels of indebtedness and how they would change. But the communities themselves are thinking of this in terms of different levels of indebtedness. And for most people, that is, well, we still owe $48 million on this facility, and they don't owe anything because they don't have any debt. And that's the way most people are thinking about it, and I think that's sort of the way the General Assembly was thinking about it. They didn't say different levels of debt as expressed through tax rates. They just said different levels of debt. So I think we might ask for that.
Krista?
Yeah, John?
So, just kind of looking through here real quick and looking at the numbers on the bottom and on the charts, there's two that stick out to me, 9 and 11, pages 9 and 11. So I think all of our,
Please excuse this interruption. Just a reminder that both the library and the gym are closed for 8 o'clock today. Students are also reminded to be aware of the many guests that we have in our building today and to ensure that they feel welcomed if you see them. Thank you.
Nice gentle reminder. John?
so page 9, it looks like, when you look at the tax rates, of course, the one jumps out on the bottom there, that's 17.2, but then it looks like none of that is related to debt or very little of it. And then page 11, so I just wonder your drill down analysis of this after I get done talking here in 2 seconds. And then page 11, it looks like Woodford has a big jump here. Could you just, the other ones seem fairly, I mean, as far as budgeting purposes, of looking to grow the tax rate, year after year, the other ones seem fairly reasonable when you're looking at the impact on tax rate. Could you tell us about those two? I don't know if I'm missing any here that really have a huge spike otherwise.
No,
Most of them look like they're single digits.
I think there's, I have not really sat down and looked at this to analyze it, but I think those are the two that I noticed also.
Okay.
Again, West Haven, that's last year's, they've already voted to merge, and they are now within the new modified unified, so it's an outlier at this point.
Yeah, okay.
On page 11, though, that's an excellent question, and I'm pretty sure somebody picked that one up. And this kind of goes back to what Stacy was asking about, an explanation as to what's happening in some of these cases. The Southwest Vermont has a number of school districts, as does Bennington Rutland supervisory units, have a number of school districts that receive federal forest impact aid. And the way that language is written, partly because of Vermonters a long time ago, the way that language is written on the federal level is that it goes to the school district and the town. So what's happening is, in Woodsford's case, they're getting I can't remember what the number is, at least $1,000 per pupil, per equalized pupil, at least, in federal tax dollars, or federal revenue. What that's doing is that's reducing their education spending, which in turn reduces their tax rate. When you take that money and you spread it over a bigger population, they don't get the full benefit of it anymore. And that's what you're seeing here in this case. If I was to put that amount back in, I would be willing to bet that you would see Woodford probably not change by much more than 5%. But Woodford has a very substantial amount of federal forest impact aid
And
coming
that
in.
actually might show up in their municipal side, because their
And it
municipal
shows up on the
tax rate
municipal side too.
is super low too.
That's
Plus
right.
one of
But
the-
And
few
it shows up there.
students, but very few students.
Yeah.
But, exactly.
That's the
and
magic
very-
formula.
And very
Yeah.
few students. So that's, as Oliver was saying, the few students kind of magnifies that impact.
Yeah.
When you then take it and spread it over everybody else, though, the magnification goes away.
So there's a ton going on here.
There's more going on than meets the.
Woodford's not a big town, but it seems like there's a lot going on.
It's a relatively small amount of money, but a small amount of money with very few students.
It has a substantial impact.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So that was an excellent question. You
Mark,
get an A
any
for that one.
questions?
Yeah, I'm trying to homogenize this into, I live in Town A, and we're supposed to merge with Town B, and the impact on my tax rate, both from as a school district that's, pre-K 6 or 8 or whatever, but not including the Union District. Can you simply tell me where to look on this chart to get that information?
On the
The
graph
impa-
itself?
On the impact of.
On the
a
graph
merger?
itself, no, because it's blended together.
Right. So there isn't, on the tables below, there isn't a
There is. And on the tables below, if you go to the last page, which is J. Westfield. And again, this goes back to a question Oliver had, where the town's kids go to school, what school district then has a role in this, and I'll come back to that in a second. So that further confuses it. But if you look at J, school district, you see that currently they have a tax rate of 76 cents. When they're merged, and I take the exact same percentage of equalized pupils that gave you that 76 cents and apply it to the merged tax rate, I get 72 cents. So it drops for J. Westfield, on the other hand, goes from 97 cents to $1.04, $1.05. So they increase. So you have to know what you're looking at in order to pull that information out. The information's there. There's probably a better way to do this. It depends on what people want to see. And you'll see that neither of them had any debt. The debt's all at the union schools. So that kind of simplifies it. But that's how it's happening. You're seeing it down here. I'm open to suggestions to how you'd like to look at it. I don't have any
It's
ego in this.
interesting too, I mean, the tax rate information is really interesting, especially how it splits out on debt. I will say this, though, at the local level, if we cut everyone's assessment in half and double their tax rate, but they're paying the same amount year one and year two, no one cares. People are
I see.
only worried about, at home, people are only worried about how
Who's
much
coming out of your
money-
pocket?
How much money they write in that little box on the end of the check. That's really the question in the end of the day. So the debt versus, I mean, this is all in, as it relates to Act 46, that's great, but that's really the number that, when people come in and pay their taxes, that's what they're interested in.
So, and again, this is at the town level, not split out between debt and no debt. this last column right here that I didn't mention, on the very edge, right there where my finger is, folks, right